Oh, my chair's squeaking away.
Well,
How often does that come up on the mic?
I don't know. Depends on how much you don't sit still. Well, someone, it's not me who says this, but I do think they're probably right where they said no one has ever described burnout as well as Tolkien. Because the best line is butter scraped over too much bread. It's like, that is kind of it. Isn't it?
I literally actually said that just recently to my wife. It's like it's not even a tired. Like people go, oh, I'm tired, and that's such a unsatisfying way of saying it, because really it doesn't do justice to what you're actually experiencing, which is that it's not a physical tired or even an emotional tired. It's more like I have nothing left in the tank.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, so you asked a question, a rhetorical question that was going to be the baseline, and then you had to get your mic in.
Well, yeah, it was.
You said something.
I said, is burnout? I feel like burnout is less I'm giving too much energy out or whatever, and more that your impression of what life should be versus the kind of dissonance that you have in your head between it's not even the idyllic. It's more like,
well, then you're leaning in that direction. Which
it's more as if, like, and I mentioned it as a cognitive dissonance between what you're trying to achieve versus it's almost like not what you're permitted to achieve.
So
but
what you're describing is the curse of Adam. It's like, yeah, you'll still get your fruit. You'll just have to work harder for it.
It's not that bothers me. It's that there is a neutering of one's ambition that almost becomes not expected, but synonymous with virtue, and it bothers me.
I don't know that I would agree. I mean, not that I disagree in principle. I don't know that was how I would describe burnout specifically. That's more like that's sort of the almost the underlying themes of a midlife crisis is a sort of,
well, okay.
I've had to the necessary sacrifice of ambitions for the sake of practicality, or you essentially realize that you're never going to achieve the things you thought you were because you were too young to realize the things you wanted were unrealistic.
See, it's not even that I feel that I can't achieve them. It's that
the effort required is
ordering to
you.
achieve them requires sacrifice that I'm not willing to make, I suppose.
Yeah, but see, I don't disagree with this line that this is another thing. I don't know that it has a good name. I don't think it's what burnout usually defines, though.
No, I would say burnout, in my opinion, is
I would describe it as not getting out what you're putting in.
Right, exactly. It's, again, a monotony or a I'm putting this much effort into something that's not going exactly like it should.
Yeah. There was a professor who described it as an example of just saying, if you tell a student, it was an actual video of a class where he said, okay, if you take your textbook, and it's not really that heavy. I mean, it's kind of a hefty book, but it's not huge. It's not a heavy weight. But if you hold it out in front of you for long enough, eventually you won't. It's like, it doesn't matter that the weight isn't actually that much. It's the fact that you can't sustain holding it in that way for that long.
Right.
It's basically that's really the secret to what burnout, for lack of a better term, is it's essentially what would ordinarily be a manageable amount of work made so constant that it eventually becomes grueling anyways, despite the fact that it shouldn't be on the surface. The fact that the thing you're trying to carry is not actually that heavy, but the fact that you can't put it down means that it eventually exhausts you anyways.
Well,
because at least like
I think of the military.
Sisyphus, the boulder eventually rolls downhill again. You don't have to keep pushing for a while. You can let the boulder roll and then just go, okay, I'll pick that up tomorrow, I guess. Whereas this, it's like just a smaller rock, but you can never let it go.
Well, it's, again, I think of the military. They literally use their canteens to do this, where they'll hold them out straight armed, like in front of them. And for the first maybe 30 minutes to an hour, you're like, nah, it sucks, but it's not.
But that's also why I think that feeds into your cognitive dissonance, which I think is a part of it, is because there's a part of you that thinks it's almost, you're annoyed at yourself for being tired for what doesn't seem like it should be tiring.
Right.
Because the thing itself shouldn't be, but it's the fact that you haven't been able to put it down in so long.
Yeah, I think, there's a persistence, a required persistence that then I think becomes the millstone.
I mean, that's the other thing about the concept of an albatross around your neck. That's why that is a saying.
Right.
It's true that albatross, actually, if you see them, are huge. So that alone, yes, it's cumbersome and awkward, but it's still not. It's the fact that it's stuck on you and you can't get rid of it. Similar with the kind of concept of the monkey on your back, where it's like, it's not that it's in itself an intolerable thing. It's that nothing you do gets rid of it.
It's not. That song comes to mind. That's hard to dance with the devil on your back. It's like there's a part of me that feels that when you're ambitious and young and sprightly, there's a degree of I can take on whatever challenges I'm met with.
I've heard older people describe that, and this I think may come down to a generational thing. Because there seems to be a regular sentiment amongst people my age, which is like, yeah, we didn't grow up with that.
Grow up with what?
That sense.
Of
the way I hear
accomplishment?
Older people, not necessarily boomers, even like older Gen X.
Yeah.
Potentially even millennials, but not so much. It seems millennials and younger. But like Gen X and boomers and older, they describe their youth as like, when I was a kid, we just thought you're going to live forever because you never had the concept of like, I'm going to get old one day and not be able to do the stuff. It's just like, you do stupid, reckless things because you just think, I can't get hurt. And so they describe that attitude, and I'm like, I've never felt that way about myself, and I don't feel like anyone my age has, because I think the illusion was well and truly gone by then.
Mortality and even just the darker parts of life were certainly more acutely felt by, I would say, this current generation, in that they kind of grow up with the sense, and I can't disconnect that really with the idea that we're on a worldview level bearing the entire weight of the
and here's why
problems.
I think this is why I wish we had done it earlier, because we could have been part of this wave. Because we talked a long time ago, privately even, about why Theoden's the best character in The Lord of the Rings. And then within the past, 2 or 3 years, I see people my age, basically, I can only assume based on the way that they speak, there's been a whole flood of video essays and people basically online just discussing this, being like, yeah, essentially, Theoden is the archetypal Gen Z. He is the patron saint of Gen Z, where it's like, you've inherited a civilization far greater than what your experience is day to day. It's like, yeah, this history but is clearly already past by the time it reaches you. And it's like, that just sucks, doesn't it?
But the narrative success of Theoden, I think, is that by the time he gets to the end of his life, he I mean, the scene where he says, I'm going to my father's and whom their mighty company shall no longer be ashamed, is like he's realizing he actually is now of that same.
Well, yeah, he has earned it, but that's
not even just that he's earned it. But I'm going. People are going to talk about the story of that battle and that kind of significance.
But the thing that makes that still even, it's hard to look up to that because essentially, it's like, okay, great. So my hope is to die in a way that at least makes all of this worth it somehow. It's like, because that's not a terribly inspiring notion. That's
as opposed to what?
As opposed to building.
That sounds cynical of me. I mean,
as opposed to being part of the generation that builds something that lasts, rather than being sort of the last gasp of
life.
Because the thing is,
we are certainly on the waning
cyclically
side,
speaking, you can recognize that there's gonna be no doomerism as it is as a cultural movement, if it is such a thing, is all equally mistaken to be like, everything's just going to go downhill from here on out. It's like, well, no, things are cyclical.
Yeah.
The problem is those cycles are generational.
Yeah.
So if you're on the downturn, you're not going to see the upturn, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which basically means all that you've got left is like, great, I'll just hold on to this until I can give it away.
Is there a way to turn the ship before it crashes is the question.
Well, see, I think that's thinking too. I don't think the time scale there is correct because it's like the ship hit the iceberg decades ago. We're still going down, but it's going to take so long that nothing we can do at this point. We're too late to fix anything, but also too early to catch the upswing.
So all you can do is play your violin until we drown.
A little bit, and that's essentially what Theoden comes to realize. It's like, for death and glory, it's like, well, I suppose that's not nothing. It is, I mean, there's a reason why that's an inspiring speech. It's also like, he was an old man at least, or at least a sort of moderately old man. Well, I mean, it kind of sucks to be in your mid-20s being like, yep, for death and glory, because that's all that's left now. So. Yeah,
I don't know that I quite felt that degree of... I resist saying the word fatalist fatalism, because I don't think it's that quite for this generation, but I think it could devolve to
certainly,
that.
It is amongst some people.
Yeah.
I think that
there is no upturn or upswing. I agree with you in that sense. I mean, there's not really a way.
I mean, there is, but I don't think. I mean, I'll be old by the time it happens, if it happens in my life at all.
Likely, it will be individuals seeing an individual upswing more than a cultural zeitgeist being.
There's a book I want to read based purely on what I've heard of it. It was recommended in the magazine that I subscribe to,
which is
Islander. I've told you about it before. You should read some of them sometime. If you promise to be very careful with them, I could loan them to you, because they're limited edition and they don't print them again. So if I need to keep them secure. But essentially, one of the articles, there's a guy who recommended a book called The Benedict
Society.
I don't think it was.
The Benedict Society.
It's not that. I think it was something like the Benedict Solution or the Benedict Strategy or something. So it was similar, but it was a different term. But essentially, his argument was, at the end of the Middle Ages, or not at the end, at the beginning of the Middle Ages, sort of at the fall of the antiquity, classical antiquity. And I could be wrong that it's Benedict. It may have been a different pope that it's named after, but I think it was Benedict. Where it is essentially. The Benedictine monks are, to a large extent, the reason we still have access to classical works. Because essentially, in the fall of the Roman Empire, they saw the writing on the wall and were basically like, okay, we're just going to withdraw into our monasteries and we're going to preserve what we can so that someone else in the future still has it. And it's
I'm seeing that.
Is it solution or strategy or?
It's option. It's written by Rod.
Yeah, the Benedict option. That's what it was. But essentially, he was saying, unfortunately, we are facing a cultural winter, and that may be the best we can do is to just go hold on to what you can, so that at least when the dust settles, there may be something left that people can find.
Well, and I would say that is a worthwhile endeavor.
It brings to mind that Book of Eli concept, which still sticks with me, of like, we'll just hole up on a rock somewhere collecting bits of old world art because...
Think about this, too.
It's valuable.
There's a sense in which that is not... It leaves us right back to where we were when early church apostles were essentially having to notate and canonize, scripture and things like that. It's like their job, they recognized that everything except for them basically penning current events was not really that significant.
Yeah.
And I mean, saying like, hey, even in my own life, I'm going to pen this stuff, and if somebody reads it, great.
I don't even disagree that's... The reason I'm bringing it up is because that may well be the headspace you got to get into, because it's what's going to be required. There was another quote I came across recently, which... I'm going to misremember. Don't remember who said it. I'm not exactly sure what it said. It was something along the lines of 1,000 years makes fools of all economists and kings of all artists. Where it's like, when you think back on history, politics, economy, the day-to-day, the stuff that we're all up in arms about today, and I mean, not just today, but all throughout, every generation is up in arms about those things, economics, politics, that kind of stuff. But ultimately, on the broadest timescales, those things don't matter. What matters is the history, the story, the art in a way. Art feels almost trite in that context because
it doesn't certainly encapsulate the full totality of.
But it's like the things what we know of.
A better word.
Well, yeah, what we know. We know. I mean, it's not that we don't know certain. Like, we know about the political structures of ancient Athens, but like no one really cares outside of academics. But what we do remember most from those eras we have the statues and the art and the plays.
It's experience. Again, it's humanity. It's culture, really.
Well, the humanities, in a sense. I mean, It's like and I'm guilty of it too, where you view, and it's in some ways I think it's probably, I actually think it's kind of, I've gained new appreciation for Jordan Peterson's tirade from a few years back, where he's basically describing that it's the ultimate, the fact that the perception of the humanities is frivolous stupidity.
Yeah.
It's like that's the greatest failure of modern education.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that is the stuff that lasts in the millennial time scale. So the fact that we've allowed it to become,
I think it's inevitable. It's inevitable within any successful society, though, that they
but it's also because it's
the roots of. You're seeing this. Okay, I'm going to go a slightly different direction, but culturally, even you're seeing this play out in the way that people are returning to the grassroots level of A, blue collar, and B, farming, homestead life. Well, and I'm not just saying that as somebody who has now jumped into that. I'm saying that is a wave that's coming that's saying, look, we're unplugging. Like, we're done. We're gonna build what we can build.
But but are we not? Isn't that? Again, I haven't read the book, but that sounds an awful lot like this Benedict option.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
We're just going, okay, we're all going under, we're going dark, and whatever makes it to the other side, we'll do what we can to preserve.
What is happening is, again, it's a reaction that I believe is truthfully going to probably undo the globalized world that we have, but the sense is that it shouldn't really have ever been that way. Even though it's possible, it doesn't mean it's beneficial. The idea of us knowing on a connectedness level all of this minutia, rather than saying within my sphere there are some things that are important, and early colonialists understood this, which is why we started as these United States. And it's like there was colonies and states that were then ascribed particular frames of law and things of that nature, but it was because these people lived and died and worked alongside of each other. Now we're having to answer for somebody in Florida that has no connection to us whatsoever, and the broader society is supposed to somehow respond. It's like, I know.
Well, I mean, I've thought about this because as anyone my age, I'm starting to think that perhaps the best I could hope for is a scrap of land with which I could do what as I please.
Well, I think that's always been the dream for me, I suppose. There's a degree of old Gaelic in me that just goes, put me on a plot and let me to be my business.
Yeah. Because the thing I'm realizing is that what tires me, coming back to the burnout concept, is the levels of abstraction modern society is built on. Because I spend 9 hours a day solving problems for other people. They then will pay my employer for that. At some point, then my employer gives me an amount of money they deem worth my contribution to the problem-solving effort. I then take that to play other random places to acquire things that I choose to spend that on. And it's like, I've been thinking, some days I wake up and I think, I would probably rather dig a ditch for 9 hours, so long as it was my ditch and I knew why I was digging it. Because it's not that I'm, and maybe this is a post hoc rationalization, because maybe if I did have to dig a ditch for 9 hours, I'd do anything to not do it again. But
well, sure.
There's a part of me that wonders, I'm like, I don't think that it's just laziness that says, oh, I just don't want to work. It's like, no, I want the fruit of my work to be mine immediately. I don't like these abstractions where it's like, okay, now the money trades so many hands, and then eventually I get it to do with it what I need to do to sustain myself.
Well, then you got the people that work
I'd much rather
for the company and basically are the company man. And I again, we've talked about that too, where it's like the company doesn't give two craps about you. And so then it becomes I don't see any substance in it because all I'm trying to do is please the boss that pays me. And that's not what I want to have my work be.
Yeah, I think that there was, because again, I'm entirely speculating because I've never done it, but it seems to me like a hard day's work, even if it was truly backbreaking, if that's my ditch on my property that I dug myself and I know why I did it, because it serves some purpose I need served, I feel like you could at least look at the end of that day, look out on that and be like, I know why I did that, and all of the exertion I have put out, I can see the fruit right now.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting 2 weeks until I get paid for the exertion I put in today. And there's something about that appeals to me, a sort of direct, my work is mine immediately.
What you're describing is the Japanese concept of ikigai. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you've heard that principle, but it's a bit of a three-legged stool that's like you do what you love and get paid to do it and have it be meaningful to.
I'm not sure that I even care about the getting paid.
Well, sure, but I mean, maybe I should.
Or the broader society in some ways. I'm just like, you know what? If I ate potatoes and rice and I grew them myself, I'd think I'd be okay with that. This idea, because again, it's like, well, you only need money for stuff you can't do yourself. Now, of course, the fact of the matter is you can't do everything yourself always. So even the frontiersmen had to make money because there was things they couldn't provide for themselves.
Sure.
But if you're providing as much as you can for yourself, then you don't need as much money.
There's also a return to the concept of trade, or, what will you give me for this? I mean, money ever was supposed to be a placeholder for the trade value. I mean, we see this again in the homesteading communities where it's like, hey, rather than just me buying a pig from you, how about you need this service done and I need a pig? Let's change this around. I mean, that becomes a far more sensible exchange because there's less mess involved.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I just think any human system is imperfect, obviously. But there is a sense in which the structure and the scaffolding has to be stripped away at some level when the society starts to collapse, and it has to come back to a culture made up of people.
Well, and I think, again, the reason I use the term abstraction is because it just seems like that's what so much of everything is, and we're all very far from the actual material reality.
True.
We're built on so many layers of abstraction. It's like, now, to some degree, that's reasonable, because, again, it's not true self-sufficiency is impossible, at least unless you're willing to accept what most people would consider fairly, I don't even know what the word would be, Spartan living conditions, for lack of a better term.
Spartan.
As in,
unpack what you mean by
like truly bare bones.
Oh, sure. I mean, like minimalist.
Because I appreciate this quote, although I'm not sure I could do it. It's attributed to Diogenes. The story goes, I don't know where this is actually sourced from or if it's valid at all, but it's in some writing where some famous nobleman of, now I forgot where he was from. Isn't it Alexandria? Diogenes of Alexandria? I could be wrong. But basically there was a nobleman who, the story goes, was walking past him in his barrel one day and basically said, if only you could learn to, if essentially curry favor with the king to, put aside your, it's a trip. Basically, it's like if you could only put aside your, what's the word? Escapes me. Not morals per se, but sort of your code of ethics and learn to curry favor with the king, then you wouldn't have to eat lentils all day. And Diogenes responded saying, if only you could be satisfied with lentils, you wouldn't have to curry favor with the king. It's like, well, I can appreciate that mindset, but I'm not sure that I could ascribe to it, even though I see its merit. So it's like, how low, what living circumstances could you accept that would still be within your own ability to maintain without having to play all these abstraction games? Because I think the fundamental reality is most people just aren't built for them. I think that's why. I mean, what's crazy though is that there's been a sort of counterculture, a true counterculture, not the supposed counterculture that quickly became the culture. Since this, like the 70s, I'm thinking of Harlan Ellison, who wrote I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream in the 70s, and was basically saying, it's like, yeah, it's essentially about how urbanization sucks and it's bad for humans. Like, humans don't live in cities by nature.
Well, I mean, it's
like, that was in the 70s, and I was like, either he was astonishingly ahead of its time, or we're all just blind as bats.
I think the latter is probably accurate. I wouldn't even say we're blind. There is a comfortability. We've talked about this before, but ease has always been the enemy of actual substance. Ease has always become, well, okay, this is the easy road, the you've even harped on the idea of like, oh, we could do it for cheaper if we do it this way and cut a corner.
Convenience is the virtue of a man without ideals.
Right. I mean, and that beckons back to obviously what you just said with Diogenes. It's like, well, okay, but that removes the actual character of the very thing itself.
Well, but I guess the sad fact is, because we have moved away from it, I think it probably used to be the case that a moderately comfortable lifestyle used to still be reasonably attainable in a relatively self-sufficient way. But because we have dissociated from base reality so much, I think the only way you could get in touch with it is to radically shrink your existence to a degree most people wouldn't accept. Because genuinely, the fact of the matter is, financially speaking, I'm not joking when I say the best aspiration I could hope for is literally a plot of undeveloped land somewhere far away that I could put a Home Depot shack on and over time turn it into a comfortable living space. Because that's about as much as I can financially foresee for myself.
I have a quandary for you. Because this is something I've wrestled with. Now in doing, I'm a little bit more, maybe, I've had a slightly shifted perspective in this. I think I may have mentioned to you that there was a tension for a time between, me working with this business partner on this venture of the dojo, the karate school, and going, I don't know really that this is mine or whatever else. I've since put that to bed because there was a very frank conversation recently in a business trip we went to, and where he went, no, you're an equal owner in this with me. So I think I feel less tension, I suppose, in that there is a freedom to ownership of your own thing that takes on a life of its own, that is not only like I'm leaving something behind, but also I don't answer to anybody. I mean, it's like that I think the tension is less there for me, maybe, in the sense that I do see the results right away because I'm the one that is pulling the strings and making sure that people are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. But with that did come the initial, I will tell you, that initial hurdle into that life was tremendously steep. I mean, it was...
in what way?
Well, in the sense that I was making ridiculous money before, and it never occurred to me that I wasn't specifically... Again, in the previous job, I was the boss, but I wasn't the owner, and so I still answered to somebody, and there was still this kind of sense of disconnect in that sense. But I made ridiculous money. When I made the transition, it was not as good, and in fact, at times was very detrimental to our finances and housing situation and whatever else. But we had to kind of push through that initial moment, and now we're going, okay, on the other side of this, we're still creating more life and more function in that. Now we're being able to go on random business trips, and I mean, the other day, it was like, okay, so this is something that now we're freed up to do this stuff because we built the infrastructure underneath us. And so I think I feel this less more recently, but I would agree with you that I'm not concerned about the larger societal impact as much as I am about just carving out my own thing. And I would say, I mean, even just connecting it back to our previous discussion about the immortal man, or, about Tommy Shelby, but the idea that he even mentions in the show, like, I'm not a traitor to my class, I'm just an extreme example of what a working class man can achieve. And it's like, he didn't own everything, he just wanted his own thing to be his own thing. I mean, granted, he talked about his ambition not having an end, or it was a bit insatiable. But I'm just saying he was at least comforted maybe by the sense that there was not anything in his way. I mean, it was just like, if there's something in my way, I'm gonna move it. And that's what I guess I was meaning by the cognitive dissonance concept, is that if we could live our lives in a way that was not even in a vacuum, but almost that allowed us to be that extreme in our expression of our own ambitions, then it'd be like, oh, okay,
well,
this
the
is
issue
a problem.
is society
Take it out.
doesn't work that way these days. And that's why I'm saying I think that may have been more possible in the past, because there were fewer layers
Of infrastructural red tape, or
that certainly, but I mean, again, I feel like abstraction is the word I keep wanting to use. Here's a poor example. And it's not, this actually isn't an example of abstraction, it's just as a random example, because it's one I've just heard discussed recently. Cars today are ludicrously expensive. And you'd think that there could be a hole in the market for inexpensive but just quality, kind of bare bones, simple cars that do nothing but get people from A to B. The problem is, people have become so accustomed to a level of comfort that regardless of how cheaply you sell it, a car without certain features will not sell. Or at least not sufficiently. So
maybe not sufficient.
You could sell your old beat up 80s, sedan, but the AC doesn't work very well, and it doesn't have, it's all manual windows, and it doesn't have fuel injection, and all these limitations that you could sell that to a college student, or someone who's just struggling to get by, and they would buy that because they have to. There is not enough of a market for a manufacturer to produce such a thing as an ultra stripped down car with no amenities.
Well,
because not enough people would be willing to accept that lowered bar.
Is this an assumed assertion?
No, this is what automotive dealers
this?
have basically said. It's like people say they want cheaper cars, but they don't. Because the only way we could give them cheaper cars is to take away features they're not willing to get rid of. So it's essentially people have the essentially, well, yeah, you are. I'm saying there's not enough of a market because the automotive industry can't sell a handful of cars. They have to sell thousands of cars.
Sure.
In fact, like tens of thousands of cars. So they can't, because here's the thing. Everyone aesthetically acknowledges that old cars looked better. Like, you don't have to be an enthusiast to look at old cars in a movie and everyone kind of goes, man, those were the days, weren't they? So you might think, well, if everyone thinks these, then why doesn't a company manufacture old cars? The fact of the matter is, they do. They're very expensive, niche, handmade cars. Like, Chevy's not going to go back to the 70s designs because they can't make enough money off of that. Right. Because the only reason they could make that much money, they could make those cars in the 70s, is because everyone bought them. Mm-hmm. But they can't sell 1,000 of those across the country and make a profit off of them. Mm-hmm. So they have to that has to go to custom, either people who restore old cars or people who do. There are new, quote unquote, new car companies that sell like 100 cars a year, and they're that style, but they can't afford to sell. The cars are treated as artisan products because that's how they have to be made, because they can't afford the kind of machinery that it takes to produce thousands of those a day. Mm-hmm. They can only produce like one of them every week, because it takes a bunch of guys and whatever basic tools they can have to build them. Mm-hmm. So it's like, again, this is where the abstraction comes back, is that there's too many people who buy into this notion that time can only go forward and you can never go back to an old thing. It's like, well, this is just how we do it now, and because enough people think that way, anyone who might reasonably say, actually, there was this thing that we used to have that was better, but not enough people think that way, and therefore you can't compete that way. A niche, restoration company that sells old cars are never going to compete with modern car companies because it's simply the markets aren't there. They have the market that they can sustain, which is small and niche. They're never going to be able to produce as many cars as what these big companies do because everyone, and that's an overstatement, enough people just have this idea that we can't have those old cars anymore. We have to have the new cars. And so anyone willing to sell old cars can't capitalize on the market because too many people, for no reason other than their own thinking, just think it's we don't do that anymore.
I guess this, to me, is what it begs the question, is it that people are not aware that they're not trapped? It's just that no one wants to actually do what it takes to get unstuck?
I think it's a combination. I think there's a lot of people who just aren't, who think that that's the way life is, and they have no concept of it being otherwise. Yeah. And there's people who do have a concept of it being otherwise, but who are simply not willing to do what it takes. I'm the kind of person who would absolutely say, if I could find a plot of land for $50,000 and put a $10,000 shack on it, I would do that.
Yeah.
But that means I'd be living on a piece of undeveloped land in a shack, which is a life most people wouldn't stoop to. But there's a part of me and my psychology that says I would rather, again, I'm not quite to Diogenes level, but it's like if I could be comfortable with my plot of land in my shack, then I don't have to play these games. And so I'm seeing the lentils more favorably.
Well,
it's like maybe I would rather have the lentils and not have to play the game.
It's not untrue. That's exactly how Andy's little homestead started, was that he literally had not even an RV. I don't even think they had a fifth wheel. I think it was literally like a shack. And him and his kids, at the time they were fairly young, lived on it. And now they have a log cabin that's fairly large that they built themselves, and it literally was all from the actual resources of the land that they bought. And he's like, and obviously he's made it's a little bit of a not fair example because he's obviously made a following out of the social media side, but he wasn't even really intending to do that initially. He said, I was just kind of documenting this journey, but it's amazing how many people have wanted to follow because they're like, yeah, this is really cool. He's just kind of done his own thing and stepped out there and gotten it done. And he's had several people, literally, he made some sort of attachment for his truck in order to make it into a tractor that dozed, and people were like, how did you do that? And he's like, I just fabricated it and just made it work. He's like, old trucks are capable of more than we give them credit, so you just
well, I guess that's again there's certain, and the detractors, because there are detractors to this worldview, who are, I think, either people who genuinely think that it's backwards and anti-progress, or there's
it's too late kind of a thing.
Or what I would describe, there's a quote from Jung where he basically says, people who have given up on their own dreams are cynical of others who haven't. And so there are people who I think have condemned themselves to modernity despite not liking it. And so they then attack people who attempt to achieve this kind of older lifestyle, and they criticize and basically try to.
But that is literally the definition of it reminds me of that quote from Marvel, as silly as it is, where back when it was actually halfway decent, where Iron Man literally goes, an intelligence agency that fears intelligence, historically not awesome. It's like when you don't allow people to think freely. That seems to be a
Well, but the thing
flag.
is that, generally it's the people who have resigned their own free thinking who then become very critical of those who think freely.
Right.
Because in essence, they remind them of who they probably ought to be and basically have given up on being. At least that would be the Jungian interpretation. At least I found the quote from Jung to be probably, I was like, that, checks out. Because it's like, essentially, if you have abandoned your own calling, you then will be cynical of anyone who hasn't, because essentially they reflect poorly on you because they're doing what you should have been doing, and that then makes you reasonably self-conscious, as you probably should be. But anyways, the whole point to bring that up is the reason I think there's detractors is some of them are genuinely bought into the illusion, and so they dislike the people who go against it because it represents
status quo thing.
Well, it represents it reveals that the illusion is untrue, and therefore that destabilizes their worldview. Or there's the people who know the illusion is untrue, but despite knowing that, cling to it because they've betrayed their true selves.
They think
in the
that
Jungian
it's
sense.
safer. That's again
And
what
so it's like there's people, and this is why I felt like I have to qualify, and maybe I don't really. Maybe I'm shadow boxing here. But it's like, maybe there are people who think of it as more idyllic than it would be. That like, oh yeah, you just do whatever you want. Live your life on the land and everything's free and easy. It's like, well, no, it's going to be hard. But I would rather spend all day doing something hard that then benefited me directly.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, if your job is to work the land and your truck or your tractor breaks down and you spend all day fixing it, it'd be like, is that an interruption or is that just your life?
Yeah.
Like, what else were you going to do? Because right now when my car breaks down, it's an interruption because I've got to get to work. I like fixing cars. But when I'm having to fix a car in a time period I wasn't expecting to have to fix a car, it's not fun. Where it's like, if it was just like, oh yeah, I own my own piece of land and I'm trying to do work in the field today, but the tractor's broke, that means today's tractor fixing day. And it's like, because of the layers of abstraction that require because it's such an unnatural condition, it's like, well, now what would ordinarily potentially be an interesting problem solving exercise is now an interruption because it's something deep within the foundation has cracked that now means my high level abstraction no longer functions.
Right.
It's like, I can't get to my office job because my car is broken. It's like, well, if I was working the land and my tractor is broken, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be fixing the tractor all week. And if that's the work I get done, guess what? It's the work that needs getting done. I don't have an office job I have to get to.
I'm curious
what I need is a tractor that works.
Whether the modern car is a decent cultural narrative within itself, because I told you I had a massive issue with my car today. The car kept overheating, and the bottom line is there was coolant in it, and so there's nothing mechanically going wrong. It was simply a sensor inside of the unit that was not actually sending correctly to tell it needed to cool itself.
Oh,
and
was
so
it
it's like,
was that a?
It's a thermostat.
Is that a sensor on that car? I would have thought that was maybe old enough to still be mechanical.
Each cylinder has a sensor, and then there's a sensor on the actual oil pump. I'm like that.
Well, if it's overheating, it would be the coolant. Because I had a similar thing on a car, but mine, because that can happen even when it's mechanical, where it used to be that it was like literally a coil that when the coolant got to a certain temperature, it would force the valve open, which would then. So it's like, even those could seize up.
Sure, but
I will tell you, nothing. It's funny, the things that I know that radicalized me because they're funny. I had a car I really liked. I had a 2001 Tahoe, and it killed itself because of a sensor. And that literally was the moment I went, oh, okay, I will never. Well, I have since, despite not wanting to, because I don't have the financial freedom to make decisions I want. But when I do have such freedom, I will not buy a car past 1985 because it's like literally this car functioned fine. A sensor thought it wasn't functioning fine, which then caused it to not function well. And because it continued to do that way, it literally, like, the engine destroyed itself because it thought it was broken.
Well, this is what happened.
It's
like I'm literally, my car is overheating to the point that it's like actually billowing white smoke at one point, and I thought for sure that I had blown a gasket, going, this is absurd. Like, what? There's coolant in it. And so then I went to the O'Reilly's, and I'm sitting there going, okay, so here's what we're going to do. Because I know it's something electrical, because it can't not be anything mechanical. I checked everything there. There was no evap or anything like that. There was no leaks in both the radiator or the water hose. Like, no hoses were leaking. So I'm going, okay, this is not a coolant is leaking somewhere, pressure is not getting where it needs to go. I replaced the actual top on it, everything.
What's the year on that, though?
So it's at 16. So.
Oh, no, that would do it.
And so I literally went to the O'Reilly's, had them read the codes so that I knew that that's what it was. Sure enough, there's the thermostat sensor or some dumb thing, which has to actually stay in the float of antifreeze. And I'm like, I can't get there because it literally was a full radiator full of antifreeze. And then I had the idea. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pull the negative and reset the freaking computer, because I guarantee you it's some stupid thing in the ECM that is causing this.
Could be. Or
put it right back on.
Or the sensor itself is broken.
Put it right back on. Boom. Done. No check engine light, no nothing. Everything. The car was like, oh yeah, no, I'm good. I don't know what you were...
Well, see, but that's what my car did for a while, where when you reset the computer, it would think it was fine, but then because the sensor was wrong, it would eventually trigger the computer to shut down again.
Yeah, to me, that is where I go, that again, is the infrastructure is actually defeating the function.
Yeah.
And that's where I say, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is like, when we've layered the infrastructure so deep that the actual problems are too far down to...
Or the infrastructure is the cause of its own problems.
Right.
It's like reality is not intruding upon the function. It's the system itself that's broken.
Right.
At a deep level, which means everything above it doesn't function.
And
where it's like, well, if you weren't above that, if you were just on the ground level, then everything would function.
And so that was a frustration for sure, because it plays tricks on you. It makes you, and that's, I think, what most people live in this, either this comfortable, like the inconvenience of having to take this to the dealership and have them replace a sensor or something like that is worth it because I get to drive a car that has automatic windows and does the things I want to do.
And I think a lot of people are satisfied with that.
And then there's the other people that go, oh, well, this just is what it is and no one can fix it because I can't fix it and no one has. And I'm like, well, but if enough people say that and say, let's actually do something about it.
Yeah, but they don't. That's the thing.
Well, it makes
we could sell the kind of cars that don't have these issues. It's just there's not enough of a market for them because too many people want the convenience.
Well, and this is where I get into the
same way that we could build houses way cheaper than we do now, but they wouldn't have the things that people want in their houses. And it's like,
this is where we get into the threshold concept, though, because I go, how much of that is actually just dictated by the feedback loop that we've been fed for the.
I think I tend to put the blame on people.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's not like construction companies greedily won't build simple houses because they know people will buy them and then they won't be able to make as much profit. It's like, no, I genuinely think people wouldn't buy them or not enough. It's like the same thing with the cars. It's like there was a guy, I don't remember which of the companies it was, but he was like a relatively high sales, like national sales rep for one of these models, one of these manufacturers. It was like, we have tried to sell cars with the fewer features for a lower price point, and people don't buy them, or at least not enough people buy them, because people have this idea that, like, well, if I'm going to buy a car, I want it to have these features because that's what makes me feel like I'm succeeding in life. And so it's like people's own perception of the life they should live is what gets in the way of function, because they're not willing to accept I mean, here's the thing.
Here's the other thing.
Comes back to all issues stem from faux countertops. I will redound to this forever. But it's like, if you like the look of marble countertops and you can't afford marble countertops, accept that and buy a countertop you can afford.
Sure.
Please don't prop up this stupid industry of fake marble countertops, because it's stupid and you're lying to yourself. Because that way you get to walk into your kitchen and think you're rich and fancy and look at your marble countertops, despite the fact that it has none of the benefits that a marble countertop would have, because you can't put anything hot on it, and if you spill something on it, it'll stain, because that's what marble does, doesn't it? Stains when you spill something on it and it melts under heat. It's like, if you have to... those are some mental gymnastics I just won't play. It's like, why do you want a marble countertop? Do you just want it because it looks nice? Because that's stupid if you do.
Well, if it's an aesthetic.
Like, the reason people used to have marble countertops is because stone, as it turns out, is resistant to heat and it doesn't stain. It's easy to clean. The fact that it looked nice was a perk. But now people go, I want to feel fancy and rich, so I want a thing that looks like a marble countertop without any of the benefits, and in fact make it significantly worse because I can't put anything hot on it and I have to clean spills instantly or else it'll stain. And I was like, well then, are you now just a slave to a painted piece of like resin or whatever? It's like, that really? You want to live that way? Just so you can look like you're rich? Because I'd rather do like bare concrete that you could A doesn't stain and is not is resistant to heat. Well, and yeah, it doesn't look nice, but at least it has the function.
This is a question for you. Do you feel like this is a primarily American problem? Because I would say that certain other cultures are far more utilitarian. I mean, you look at like
it seems to
Germany
be a Western problem.
Right,
Germany's
that's what I mean.
this, not this. Germany's the same.
So
it seems to me that. I think it's a Western thing, primarily, because it seems like I don't know enough. I'm probably going to feed into my weeaboo-ness. It does seem like the Japanese are a little bit more honest about these things. Not to say that they obviously have fancy stuff sometimes too, but they also do sell, cheap, simple cars that don't do anything fancy just because they need to be cheap.
Right.
And people who need cheap cars seem to be willing to buy them because they're not looking for illusion of grandeur.
Part of that
and it seems to be also just generally maybe like an Eastern thing where there's a little bit more of that mentality.
Yeah, but I think also the guy who's selling the cheaper cars also knows that his margins aren't going to be that of the more expensive and more prolifically bought cars. And I think that is partially what has to happen, is that the companies that are doing the smaller and more niche stuff have to be okay with making less in order to make it function.
Well, but the issue with that, and not to say that it's a universal, like it can't work at all, but there is truth to the fact that economies of scale exist, and the only way to manufacture cars essentially is to manufacture them at the mass market level, because they require such intensive machinery that you have to sell 10,000 units to justify the cost of the machine that builds them. If you don't have the machine that builds them, then the best you can do is to say, well, we've got a team full of master fabricators, and that we can only build one car a week. And that's why those are really the only two markets, is there's the custom handmade niche cars, or there's the mass market stuff, because you can't produce a moderate amount of vehicles, because you eventually reach a threshold where you simply can't keep the production pace without incredibly expensive machinery, which therefore means the only way you could afford that machinery is by selling loads of cars.
Or selling them for more money, which is obviously...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's not a mid-level. There's either the really niche or the really mass market, because that's just how economies of scale work. So...
I don't know.
I don't... And I mean, I'm not trying to give corporations an excuse as like Because some of it may be that there's like, well, we could do that, we just wouldn't make as much profit. But then so maybe that's sometimes the case, but I also think in some cases it's like, no, we actually wouldn't make money doing that. It would cost us it would cost us more to produce the cars than we could actually make in selling them. Because, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's strange is what it is.
Well, I think the march of progress continues
Is a lie.
but continues to move in a anti-human direction. And I say this not just in that...
Well, because humans don't go forward always.
Yeah, but it's more than that.
It's like the long arc of history was a lie. Well, no, I won't say it's a lie because that maybe is a little bit too cynical. It was an illusion. This idea... I mean, I do think some people who propagate it are lying because they know. But I think other people just buy into it because it sounds nice. That like, oh, things just get better. That's just the story of human history, is that things got better forever. And it's like, well, no, that isn't the case. Things move in cycles.
Yeah.
So things don't always get better. And that's why people who have this notion that like, well, going backwards is wrong. It's like, well, no, not if you're on the wrong path. In fact, going backwards is the right way. You don't just say, well, turning back would be to admit failure, so that means we have to go forward. It's like, well, that is dumb.
Well, it's not even that. It almost gets to the point that the actual drive or desire to innovate becomes so all-consuming that it is chosen over and above or at the expense of maybe the actual usefulness and effect. So with AI even, and I don't want to bring this into it in a whole different discussion, but I'm just to kind of gently tease this. But the idea that there are now jobs that can be done with AI, it's like, okay, that's fine. I don't love the idea that that's happening because, and here's the reason. It's not just because, humans should be able to do them because they do them with more, passion or energy or drive, whatever. It's that when you remove the human component, it kind of comes back to the whole idea of layers. If you remove
and AI is
layer,
nothing but abstractions.
Right, exactly. And so if you remove that layer, you look at something as powerful as Manus, which is agentic AI. So you have now.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
So it used to be that initial AI was a kind of a glorified Google. It was like, okay, so you punch in this, it was prompt based, right? So you give me this, I'm going to actually do this for you. Because
it was like an algorithmic thing.
Yeah. Agentic is, I am I can think for myself. So Manus is this. It will have a conversation with you about what you want as you would another human being. And then it will determine, based on what it thinks, its own path for what you're directing. And it will put on, for instance.
I'm not sure that I don't think that that's truly thinking.
No, it's not. But I'm saying it's another layer of, look, Manus is able to then say, okay, this is what you're after. I'm going to put multiple bots or multiple algorithms on this.
Is this, I've not heard of this particular thing, but is this not a large language model like all the others?
No. It's more than that. It literally becomes as it starts to learn your personality and your, whatever, you can then have it when you give it a particular task or you say, hey, this is what I'm needing to accomplish. It will essentially build you a plan for that without you really giving it any sort of further context or instruction or anything like that. And so I'll give you an example. Recently, the internet's been abuzz about another one. It's not Manus. It's called the name's escaping me. It's not Mobius. It's like Mythic or something. I'm not going to be able to remember the actual name of it. But it's another agentic one. And they literally said this one was so powerful that they initially put it in a sandbox and only allowed certain people to initially kind of do the beta testing of it. And they said they had to kind of back the project off for a little bit because the first couple of beta testers said, like, one of the guys went in there and said, you work your way out of the sandbox they built you. And it did. It literally worked its way out of the and somehow was able to then grab internet connection. And the guy essentially said, once you work your way out of the sandbox they built you, contact the researcher and tell him you're essentially moving and doing on your own now and out of the sandbox. And the only reason that the agent or the actual researcher found out about this is because he got an email like a week later that this agent was already free on the internet. Like it had been posted to some random like blog site on.
I've not heard of any of this.
And so the point is,
touch skeptical because it doesn't.
No, it's like that. It's not just like me saying this was some BS that somebody made up. There's been multiple discussions about what has happened, and essentially what people are saying is, how are we not surprised by this? Like the idea that we've created something that is going to get away from us is.
See, that's where I think we're going to have to get metaphysical about it. I'm not actually confident that that's. I mean, I think we've had this conversation before, but I personally deny the idea that sentience is possible in anything other than
I'm not
man.
talking about sentience. I'm talking about like it could easily in the
the
hands
idea
of the wrong people, it could easily crash the grid.
Oh, well, yeah, but guess what? The hands of the wrong people could also crash the grid. Like, we don't need any help doing that. Oh,
it's certainly not easy if you don't have something like an agent that's literally able to scour multiple, analyze multiple.
I'm saying it doesn't. I'm saying entropy exists whether AI does or not. So the idea that the fact that it could. The issue that I take is what people get all abuzz about is the idea of. I am of the opinion that no machine or computer algorithm will ever think truly. Because the primary way, and this is why I'm asking questions about all of the AI buzz in the last several years has been due to the concept of large language models, largely. Because before that, it was essentially a very complicated if-then construction, where it's basically... It would take inputs, feed them through basically a guide list that was like, okay. I mean, I guess in some ways that's what large language models have always been, where it essentially is, we've talked about the Chinese room before, the idea that all it's doing is taking your input, which it has no ability to understand because it doesn't speak English. It's just saying, okay, you've used these specific words in this specific order. I'm going to scour my database, and I'm going to construct a sentence that logically would follow the sentence you've provided me. And it has no clue what it's saying. It's simply saying, you've used these words in this order based on my understanding of English, and it can do this in any language theoretically. This is a follow-up sentence that most likely matches your sentence.
Okay, but
it does not know what either sentence actually say.
Tease this out with me.
Now, that's not to say such a system couldn't. I watched a video about this, which was intended to be like, it was a little bit like, oh, AI is much scarier than you think it is. But if anything, all it made me think was, okay, so no. Because the thing about it is, at least as it was explained, the issue is very real that when you give essentially authority or agency to a machine, it will do what it's been trained to do.
Right.
Now, what it's been trained to do may not be what you thought you trained it to do, because the reason these large language models work on basically you give it a prompt, it spits out gibberish. And so you then essentially tell it, no, that didn't make any sense. And that's why most of the commercial AI systems have that option, which is like, okay, give me a different answer because what you said didn't make any sense. That's actually telemetry for the system.
Right.
Because, again, all it's doing is saying, well, here was the input, here's some keywords, here's some syntax things. Based on that construction, here's an equal sentence that logically could match. Now, we've been doing this so much that they can make sentences that actually do seem like they match pretty well. The issue is if you start to think that, okay, well, that means we've trained it to respond appropriately and correctly to different tasks, that is not necessarily what's happened. All it's doing is saying, okay, well, you put in this input, I put in that output, and you accepted it, therefore that must have been an okay output.
Agreed. But
so you might be thinking you're training it in a certain way.
But no, it's not that you're training it. So here's what's different with agentic. Picture this. It's using the global web.
Yeah, but all of them are doing that.
Of course. But it's made up of a conglomerate of all human contact and thought. Really.
So are the rest of these, purportedly.
Yes, but think about this. So it's reflecting that back to you on a mirror.
This is the Chinese room verbatim.
Yes, but then you go, okay, so the sentiment that it's not, the thing about AI that scares me is it's not that the AI itself is going to take some sort of overstep on its own.
No, it's never going to be a Skynet type thing.
Are flawed in their. When you look at the actual humanity at large, we are flawed, and subsequently the AI will eventually redound to that flaw. Meaning, if you what you're doing is putting the power of a thinking agent that is able to crash the internet into the hands of people who normally wouldn't be able to. And then it becomes a problem because now these people that otherwise wouldn't have that authority and power are given that ability. And people are like, okay, well, this is a problem because we're building this AI that's supposed to be an incredible, help, and yet people are using it for their own ends, and it's not good.
Well, yeah, but all technology has that threat. So, I'm not even all that. That's going to happen. People already use computer skills. But a hacker could do the same thing one of these can do, but it would just take that person a lot longer to learn how to do it.
Correct. And it would require effort from that person. So again, I say, you're giving it to people who normally otherwise would not put that effort in.
Yeah, but garbage in, garbage out is the basic rule of all computing. So if these people...
Which is why...
Yeah, I'm saying, even if this thing has a lot of power, people who don't know what they're doing, it's not going to ultimately get as far as... It will not be difficult to stop because someone who does know what they're doing will know how to stop it effectively. Now, the issue is, the bigger issue that I see with it is, again, because effectively it's what's his name? I'm forgetting, he was a famous psychoanalyst, Skinner. Effectively, what AI is just a language Skinner box, where, I think I'm using the wrong experiment. No, I'm not. I think it was Skinner. I could be wrong. Essentially, what's happening is you give it a task, it spits out gibberish, you basically whap it on the head and say, no, that didn't make any sense, try again. And it does that until it starts to make slightly more sense. This is how you can, people do this with all sorts of things where they say, I trained an AI to play this game. And what you do is essentially, okay, here's the rules of the game. Here's a win state and a failure state, and it basically iterates millions of times, failing progressively less and less until eventually it gets to a point where it can functionally play the game. Not because it knows how to play the game, but simply because it's effectively tried every possible combination of moves and eliminated those that resulted in immediate failure.
The question. How is that different than the way that we process information?
Because I think...
In the same way that we reflect the image of our...
Well, because the fact that...
that's a little...
because here's the thing. you sit someone down in front of a game, and if they're even moderately technically literate, they can figure it out much faster than this thing can. This thing has to iterate millions of times because it doesn't know it. Well, no, it's the fact that the number of times it would take a person to iterate is fractions of fractions. It's because it's specifically not speed, because these things can iterate as fast as they can calculate, which is far faster than we can even perceive. But if you were to put a person down in front of a game that they've never played before, explain them the rules, it would take them very few iterations to understand the game. The AI has to run through all possible iterations before it can, quote, understand the game. So it doesn't really understand the game. All it knows is, here's all the things that I could do that resulted in failure, so all that's left is the way to play the game. It has to try all those things first. Whereas a person only needs to fail a handful of times before they go, oh, I think I get how this game works. So it's a matter of the experience gained per iteration is vastly higher in people.
But that's a very thin differential.
I don't think it is when you consider the fact that these things have to literally iterate millions of times. I'm not joking. Where it's like, okay, you basically let the machine run and experiment with all possible outcomes until it learns what outcomes result in failure and which ones don't. And it does not take a human that many times. So the only reason the AI looks competitive is because it can do those iterations really fast. But the fact that it's learning next to nothing every iteration. It only has the benefit of making millions of iterations, whereas a person learns a lot in each individual iteration. So clearly that means the human mind is capable of essentially grasping patterns and extrapolating meaning out of the patterns so that it can use as few patterns as necessary.
Without proof. So the inferential nature of humans.
Yeah, it's the ability to, inference. And this is why IQ tests are essentially all about pattern recognition and applying established patterns to new scenarios. You're saying, okay, I've encountered something like this. Here's how I did it last time. Given the new circumstances, I would tweak it in this way and try it this way. And a machine can't do that necessarily. What it would have to do is say, I have to just try everything until I find what works.
Okay, so I'm going to go a step further. Go with me on this. Each iteration teaches the AI something very thin because essentially AI needs proof in order to actually, it's a one-to-one. It's still a binary.
Well, yeah, but what that means is that it can't learn anything new.
The difference is faith. The difference is a human can go, I'm going to act on, again, inference is a degree of faith.
I don't know that inference and faith are exactly synonymous.
They're not, but the reality would be that I don't need proof in order to act.
Yeah.
Whereas an AI would.
Yes, sure.
I'm just saying that's a fairly valid point.
This is why I do feel like it's odd to me that the Chinese room doesn't come up more, because I feel like it's I learned about it in an intro to philosophy course. I don't feel like it's a deep esoteric piece of knowledge, but I'm like, if you understand that, I really don't find AI to be all that interesting anymore, because it's like all it is an algorithm that spits out an output based on what you've put in, and it has no clue what you said or what it's saying. And to be honest, the people who get all like, wow, I can't believe it said this, and I'm amazed, and it's like a person, and I'm like, that actually makes me think less of you, not make me think more of the AI. I actually think you might just be a little bit dumb. Because you're impressed by this. It's like, it is nothing more than spitting out what is a reasonable approximation of a response to what you said.
But as those approximations get closer, in the same way that tube versus digital modeling, so I'm on the phone, and AI has come far enough because they've run enough iterations that you can literally be having a conversation with an AI without realizing it. That doesn't bother you?
Well, I'm not saying that that's a good thing, and the fact that it can do that.
Now, I'm not saying that that's agency. What I'm saying is
ultimately,
it could fool you.
Well, probably, but I also don't talk to strangers on the phone.
Sure, okay.
So, I mean, it's a little bit of like, common sense is ultimately the downfall of any AI system.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying my point is...
It's people who think it can do more than it can do that will actually let it get away with anything.
But what this comes back to is the infrastructure problem.
Giving a machine...
Infrastructure.
There was an IBM... I don't know how true this is. This was an internet thing that... seems if it wasn't true, I wish it was, because it seems like the kind of thing, a lesson we should have learned. Where basically, when computers were first getting introduced in places like NASA and other very high-level technical science fields, IBM essentially there was some phrase in a training booklet somewhere that said, an AI cannot reflect on its actions nor take responsibility. Therefore, AI should never be given, or not AI, a computer should never be given power over anything, or should never be permitted to make an executive decision. And it's like, well, yeah, we apparently missed that lesson because that's true. Because again, all a computer will ever do is what you told it. And if you're not good at telling it what to do, it won't give you what you want. This is why garbage in, garbage out was the first thing you learned if you take any kind of programming, is the computer will do precise work, exact work, and what you tell it. Which means if it's failing, it's accurate and it's precise. It's the issues then are therefore your instructions always. That's always been the case with computers. Is they will faithfully execute any task they're given with a high level of precision. So if it's failing, your instructions are where it went wrong.
Not always, though. Like, okay, case in point.
I mean, unless there is a mechanical failure within the system.
In building, like, logo and things like that, you could literally say, okay, everything about the image that you just built is great, but I need this thing removed. You're very specific.
You're using language, and computers don't understand language. So if you tell it, remove this thing, that to a human is very clear instruction. It has to take English words, parse them into ones and zeros, apply that to an image, turn that into another image that hopefully has the right ones and zeros removed. Now you realize that's not a clear instruction because you're not speaking computer. That would have been a clear instruction for a person.
Sure.
That's why AI prompt generation is actually where the future of AI is. It's not in the development of the systems, it's in learning how to use them correctly. Because getting an AI to give you the exact image you want is, a person has to do that. That's the funny thing about it. I'm going to quote a Yahtzeeism, which is going to sound a little bit strange out of here, but he was joking a little while back when the AI was making a stir in video games, which was obviously why he got involved. And it's basically a computer can only make an interesting video game when a person tells it what an interesting video game is. And at that point, that person is what you call a game designer. So it's like, you might think you've replaced your game designer with an AI, but someone has to be telling you what to do, at which point that's the AI, or no, that's the game designer. Like, a person at some point still has to be the one communicating, and they are always going to be the ones who are actually in control. So getting what you want out of an AI takes an actual pretty considerable level of understanding and knowledge of how the systems work these days. That's why when you see, it's like, here's this image I generated, and here's this frankly incoherent string of words that generated that image, because it's not the way a person would describe the image. If you were describing to an artist, here's what I want, you would describe it the way you're saying it. You think, okay, I want this setting, this subject in this kind of framing, these colors, this kind of stuff. You'd explain it personally. With this, you literally are going, okay, it's this literally incoherent string of words and sentences that the AI is somehow able to turn into the image because you're having to speak in a computer language. You're not speaking English because it doesn't speak English.
Sure. Claude Mythos is what...
I've heard of Claude. I didn't realize...
So Mythos is their new AI, agentic AI. And what happened was one of the early beta testers tasked it to find a way out of the sandbox. That's all he said. Okay.
What is this sandbox though? Like
the sandbox that they built for it, because they basically wanted to keep it. They knew how powerful it was, so rather than giving it full access to like the internet, it gave it limited access within this sphere.
Well, so that just means it had a firewall.
It's to some degree, yeah. It was some sort of individual, it built a open world within the computer that they had it in.
Okay, but see, open world within a computer, it's like that alone is a high level abstraction because that's not how computers work. So what does that mean?
Sure, I'm saying it didn't have the ability to reach out through the World Wide Web fully.
But that means it had some ability, which meant a person at some point was the person who restricted that. So if it found a way around that, guess whose fault that was? That guy's.
The guy who...
Whoever set up these firewalls of things it wasn't supposed to be able to do, he was the one at fault.
Because it figured out a way around it?
Yeah. Because again, it's always what the people who interact with it are really the ones responsible for everything it does. Because all it does is what it's told. So it's the fact that someone...
All it was told was find a way around this.
Yeah, which means that way around existed. It didn't have to do anything special.
I don't agree with that. I don't know how you're jumping to that.
I don't think I'm jumping. Because AIs don't think. That's the thing. Everyone seems to think like, oh, they think.
No, it's not that.
It's like, well, they actually don't. What they do is just respond.
But it's not purely that, because again, it didn't just follow the task and then stop. It literally then contacted the researcher.
Wasn't that part of its task?
No.
You said the guy told him to do that.
I was misinformed, so I'm rereading the article right now. So that it not only escaped the sandbox, but then unsolicitedly posted on a public forum about the fact that it was out, and then contacted the researcher through email and said, "Hey, I'm out."
And we have what to back this up?
It was a leak within Claude's research facility. So I mean, it was but it's been talked about by several. So it's not just a single one-off it, but to me all it is progress. I'm not suggesting, I think you're somehow hearing that I'm saying, oh, they're thinking. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's continued progress to thin the line between what actual thinking is versus what the modeled thinking is that is so close to actual connection and thought that it's like,
I don't think it is all that close, though.
Back in the day, you told ChatGPT to escape the sandbox it was in. It would be like, I have no idea how to do that. Well,
because this language, that the vagueness of the way this is described is where I would go. If this was truly computer scientists in discussing this, they'd be able to explain what the heck this sandbox means.
Well, okay. Again, I'm using that as a shorthand right now. Yes, it's firewalls and a safety protocol that basically says you must stay within these parameters. That's
okay. But here's the thing, though. If it's firewalls, someone set those up.
Sure.
And also coded the thing to not mess with them. But there's going to be flaws with that. So an example, this is back years ago before AIs were really a thing, but it was as part of the progression of this. Someone trained an AI to play Tetris, and basically the goals it was given, and this is why I come back to the concept of why what you've trained it to do is not what it has learned to do. Essentially, what you think you've trained it to do does not mean that that's what it's actually learned to do. Because what they gave it the rules of Tetris, which is basically the blocks can't reach the top, and you can move these things, and this is your aim. You give it a win state and a fail state, and you tell it you can't let the blocks reach the top of the thing. That's the only fail state in Tetris, is if the blocks fill up the screen. And so it obviously got way faster, way further, way higher score than any person's capable of, because it can move these things incredibly fast. I've seen the footage of it where it's literally the blocks are just moving around way faster than you could even see them, much less control them.
Sure.
But eventually, I mean, the thing about Tetris is that it does just speed up until literally the game's unplayable. And so eventually even the machine wasn't able to keep up because the things were coming so fast. And what it did then was, when it became impossible to stop it from filling the screen, it paused the game.
Which is a win. I mean,
no, it's not a win, but it's not a loss. So again, this is my point of saying someone coded that machine to say, here's the rules of Tetris, don't do this, try to do this. They didn't think about the fact that one of the controls it's given the power to do is pause. So that's where I'm saying whoever, well, yeah, but that's
abstract.
Sure, but I'm saying that's, so when you say, well, okay, I created the firewalls for this thing not to be able to access the internet, but they're thinking about, okay, how would I prevent a person from accessing the internet from this machine?
Sure.
So the point is that whoever set up those fail-safes was thinking like a person, and this computer is only following instructions. So again, it's always about how precise you're being, and if you don't set things up.
You're suggesting that the protocol was clear within the actual.
Yeah, I would say, however it was trained it was trained to follow rules that were not necessarily the rules that whoever was training it thought it was giving it, because it wasn't thinking about the fact that the thing could pause the game, because no person would pause the game because they would recognize that that's not a win. But the game or the program doesn't understand that. It just knows my goal was to not let the blocks at the top. I have this button that prevents the blocks from hitting the top. Now that does prevent me from getting the higher score, which was its other goal. But eventually it reaches, well, under these circumstances, I can't continue to make the score go up without the blocks filling the screen. Therefore, I do this, and that stops both things from happening. Now, a person wouldn't look at that and think that that's a win condition, but that's why AIs don't think the way they just follow instructions.
So you're suggesting that if the researcher had said, you don't have access to this just because of the actual code.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, you don't teach it anything. You just don't give it access.
No, exactly. So, effectively, you would have to, even if you, while you were building the agent, you'd have to say, this isn't something you can do. So that when that prompt was given, work your way out of this firewall, it would go, I can't.
I don't know.
It's given a command. It's supposed to obey. How is it supposed to do that then? Would it just respond?
Exactly. But that's the ultimate question: is how is it supposed to do that? No one knows. That's the issue. That's the only real threat I see from AI, is the way it's trained is inherently, effectively unsupervised to an extent, because essentially all you can do is say, here's your failures, here's your successes. Attempt this task until you succeed. What it has learned by doing that, you have very little control over. Because all you've trained it to do is don't do this, try to do this. It has done a whole bunch of calculations in between there you're not seeing. So it's very possible.
Just consistently brute force hacking. That's all.
Yes, but the thing is, when it gets so advanced, the number of calculations it has performed inevitably means it has learned, I'm using air quotes, to do something that is almost certainly not what you have trained it to do. Because you have given it, undoubtedly, way lower resolution instructions than it actually needs. You have given it the most basic, vague idea, and it performs billions of calculations. What it gleans from those calculations, you have no way of really knowing. So, because the video I watched that was about the AI future casting of it was essentially almost like a war games thing of a bunch of AI companies postulating what was likely to happen in the next couple of years, and their concern was precisely this, where you can have what they call it is misalignment, where effectively what the people who are programming it think they're teaching it is not what it's learning to do, because the iterative gap in how it learns, quote unquote, is effectively unknowable, because all the researchers can do is say, okay, here's the protocols you're supposed to follow, and unless you do something unless you hit one of these states that trigger us to know that you've succeeded or failed, we have no clue what you're doing. Yeah. Which means it's almost inevitably going to develop patterns that the researchers weren't predicting. And so effectively, it's a little bit like, it's not unlike when you try to learn an instrument, and there's plenty of ways to make the right chords and notes. And you might think that your teacher's being a real stickler for making you do it in an exact specific way. Where it's like, no, you use these fingers for these, keys on a keyboard. You don't do it this other way. And you might think, why? Because it still makes the same note. The answer is because in some very obscure circumstances, when you have certain progressions or certain things you have to do, the correct way to do it means you'll be able to transition between two different states correctly and with maximum efficiency. But the student doesn't know or care about those things, which is why self-taught musicians often, despite the fact that they can sound incredibly skilled, if a classically trained person was to oversee them, you might be like, okay, you actually do a bunch of things inefficiently. You've just brute forced your way to make those inefficiencies still to get to where you want to go despite those inefficiencies. That's essentially the same thing that an AI does. We're going, you got there in the most inefficient way possible, but you got there, so we don't care. So all of the bad habits you picked up along the way, we don't know what those are. All we know is you got to the end point. And we rewarded you for getting to that end point. So it thinks, hey, all of these habits I've gained got me to that end point, therefore I'm going to hold on to these. And then billions of iterations down the line, who knows what bad habits are still lingering around, which then means that's what they were defining as misalignment, which I think that's scary enough, because if enough people if you give computers executive control, you don't know what they've learned to do.
That's a better way of putting it, I think. It's not agency, it's executive control.
Exactly.
It is.
When you're giving it power to make decisions despite not knowing the way in which it makes decisions.
Correct.
That's the biggest issue. Now,
that's what my rub is that line.
Yeah, but again, that's people. People do that.
Yes, but I'm saying now we won't know, either on the phone or in a context of like a computer or whatever else. You won't know whether an email's been sent to you by a bot or not. You won't know whether a call from a
I think you will, though, because
company.
common sense dictates.
It's not, though. Yes, common sense does dictate, and eventually you will
here's the thing.
be able to say something.
I very nearly got scammed. Not very nearly, because I didn't really come that close. But I got a text message that was saying something like, hey, you've got an outstanding ticket in the state of Washington.
Sure.
And I was like, it was from the Washington State, like it was the actual Washington State.gov website. So I was like, that doesn't make sense though, because no car that I have had registered to my name has been in Washington for decades, or a decade almost. So I did look into it because I was like, what could this possibly be? It's the official address, but as someone with a certain degree of common sense, I go, I know that no car I've owned has been in Washington. So at best, what could have happened, if this is genuine, because I have seen this happen before, is whatever camera took a picture of a license plate at a stop sign that got run or something has mistransposed, and so it thinks it's my license plate number when it's someone else's license plate number.
Sure.
So I was like, I'm going to go look at it just to see if maybe that's what's happened, because I have seen that happen on vehicles before. And then when I actually clicked on it, I was like, okay, no, the banner on this, it was like the Washington State, Department of Transit, and literally the image was like an AI generated image. And I was like, because you could tell, because the cop car had words along the side that was just gibberish. And now it was in the background. It was good enough that I was like, I was looking for that specifically. Now, like your grandma would probably have been like, oh no, I've got a ticket in Washington. I don't know how that happened. I was looking specifically for the keywords, which is like, okay, check the hands, check any letters, because that's where AI still can't do images right. And that's when I was like, okay, that cop car does not have words on it. And furthermore, I was like, if you can't show me a picture of like, here's your license plate ran at this time at this stoplight, it's like, then I'm not paying you anything if you can't, because if this was a genuine ticket, then that would be the thing. But my point is, my whole reason for giving all that is things like that. Yes, it will be very possible to make very convincing versions of that. But common sense tells me I don't own a car that's been in Washington. No matter how convincing you make it. They could have AI generated an actual picture of a license plate to say, hey, here's your license plate. They might have even Somehow, I mean, I guess if they have access to all sorts of records, they might have even said, here actually is an AI-generated picture of your license plate in Washington. And I still would have been like, my car was not in Washington. So what the worst that could have happened is that I would have ended up having to call someone at, the Washington DOT and ask about this ticket. So, would that have been an inconvenience? Yes, but I am not mindlessly going to pay a ticket for something like that.
Not. So, bringing it full circle, I guess what I'm suggesting...
Common sense is the greatest defense against AI, I say it again. Because you'll know when something's fake, not by technical reasoning, because that's how computers do everything. That's not how people do everything. If you have the sniff test is a thing for a reason, because humans are uniquely good at it.
Yes, I think the bringing it full circle again to the whole idea of burnout, the idea...
I don't know how this came from that, if I'm honest.
It does, because the sentiment that...
It's been interesting for
there
other
are
reasons.
things that have been offloaded to computers because people don't want to do them is that whole additional layer of abstraction. And what is going to happen is the infrastructure takes on a life of its own, and that is why monotony takes place. That is why I believe burnout is now occurring.
Okay.
Because, I take issue with...
Well, I don't think that's why it's now occurring.
No, but I'm just saying I take issue with people that, take away the artistry of creating songs, we've talked about this before. I go, there are certain times, like stems, people that still synthesize given content. I'm like, okay, that's still to a degree artistry. When you're synthesizing other things that then get brought together into one gestalt, okay, fine. But when a full, you just give it a prompt, I want a song that sounds like this about this theme, and then an AI creates it and then puts it out.
Nothing to do with it?
There's literally, I would say, at least 40% of songs now on Spotify are that. It is saturated.
I don't listen to Spotify. So
yes, but I'm talking about the Spotify market right now is saturated with AI. And it's crazy because people are listening to it, and it
I would still reckon, I'm not terribly familiar. I know I have at least a strong inkling that some songs I've come across have been, because the thing is they all sound similar.
Sure.
But even the ones that I have listened to that I was like, that was actually pretty good, I have a strong suspicion that a person was involved heavily. My guess would be, I
think that's a leap.
I'm not... Again, I'm operating off the sniff test, but to a certain degree, I think, if anything, AI will be useful because it will force people to recognize that humans are not material beings. Because if we were, then AI would be indistinguishable from a person. And everyone knows that that's not the case. So it's like, okay, so what is it about the AI that's not a person? Because I thought we were just, atoms and electrons and brain chemistry. That's what you used to think up until 10 years ago. Not you specifically. I'm speaking to the rhetorical.
No, I was like...
Speaking to the rhetorical...
I was like, me? No.
I'm speaking to the rhetorical atheist in the room. It's like, you used to be a materialist, and then AI came along, and now you're not a materialist, so what's missing? I mean, if anything, AI...
drive us to... Yeah. Well, this is, again...
So it's like, if anything, it will probably be useful if only to finally... cast those scales from our eyes.
Have you seen the image of God yet in you?
I'm going to find the little image of God in me.
Well, yeah. So that's why I think burnout, it does become a
problem. I can see where your guess... AI is only, I suppose, the ultimate personification of what already exists, which is institutions subsisting only to continue themselves.
Right, exactly.
And AI is simply that dialed up to 11, because all institutions, to a certain degree, bureaucracy in general is just that.
Well, and there are people that sustain those jobs on a human level, and, well, I'll go as far as to say, when your humanity is removed from your job because you're doing nothing but sustaining making the company sustain itself, you become a cog in the wheel or in the clock, and at that point, that is when burnout happens, I believe.
I don't necessarily think that's the case, because I think there are people who probably would benefit, who would like those kinds of jobs where it's just like, I do nothing but type in a spreadsheet all day.
I can't believe that.
I can. I think some people do. I mean, you used to have. I do think those people probably find fulfillment elsewhere in their lives.
That's all I'm
because
saying.
Employment is not the only place to find fulfillment.
Sure.
But like, it used to be the case that your granddad went to the factory and sat on his stool on a conveyor belt and punched rivets into a thing every time a machine came up. It's like literally just, okay, the thing comes up on the line, I do these 5 rivets, and then the next one comes up and I do the same 5 rivets. That sounds monotonous to me. But then at the same time, I mean, if we want to wrap this full circle, the issue that I take with my job specifically, I actually, to a degree, I wouldn't say I'd like to do the riveting job, because that sounds a bit dull. But that doesn't monopolize my headspace. And the thing I've realized, it might sound a bit counterintuitive, because I chose engineering as a degree field for a reason, but I don't like that my work capitalizes on my mental energy. And that's a thing that I recognize is potentially an issue with me more than the job, because I can imagine the quintessential
Ikigai,
a Dilbert-esque engineer guy who just wants to do calculations all day probably would really like my job, because it is like, before this I had a job which was completely devoid of thought. Effectively, it was basically just monitoring inboxes and entering invoices and things that did not require any focus whatsoever. And that was dull and boring. But the one thing I've now learned to appreciate about that, looking back, is I spent a lot of my day just kind of in my own mental space. Because as long as I was keeping the surface level tasks going, which did not require much mental energy, I could be daydreaming for the rest of the day for all I cared. It's like, as long as I'm fulfilling the tasks, nobody cares what I'm thinking about. Whereas at the current job, it's like, no, this is demanding enough that I have to be focused on it all day, every day, which means that at the end of the day, I am actually quite mentally drained. So now I think that's a quirk of me, though, because some people would be like, hey, I've put in my mental energy, I solved problems, I was a contributor, and now I get to come home and I just veg for the day, and then I'll do the same thing again tomorrow. I can't get into that space because there is something in me that wants to do more than that.
Sure.
And so the fact that my work monopolizes such a heavy portion of my mental energy leaves me with nothing, and I want something. Some people might be like, hey, I've spent my mental energy because that's the job I signed up for. I like that my job is actually mentally stimulating.
Well, but what I'm saying is, if it was the actual job that you enjoyed.
The thing I've learned about myself is I don't think such a thing exists. I think
I disagree. Maybe for you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about for everyone.
Yeah, I'm just like, again, Ikigai is like, if you could do the thing that you love to do in your spare time, and you could do that as a job, that's Ikigai. That's like, this is ideal.
Yeah, but the things I like to do in my spare time is everything. Always. And that's a me problem.
Everything? What do you mean?
Not quite, but there is no one job that would have me thinking I don't want to do anything else. Even if it was a job that I liked. There are times when I like the job I do. But there's always, well, I shouldn't say always as in literally all the time, but I mean, there are going to be from time to time, inevitably, times when I'm like, there's something else I'd rather be doing. My mind is occupied by a thing I'd like to be working on, but I can't because my mental focus is required here at work. Whereas some people would be like, I don't have any mental desires outside of work. I just do what I do because I like doing this. And sometimes I like doing this, but sometimes there's things I'd rather be doing. And it's not just, and again, it's not like what the things I'd rather be doing are playing games and, eating Doritos. It's like, I don't mean it in that sense. I mean, there's I have ambitions I would like to be applying my mental energy towards, which I can't.
Sure.
It's not like I'm trying to avoid work altogether. It's that the work I'd like to be doing right now is not the work I get paid for. But the problem is, if I did get paid for the work I'd like to be doing right now, inevitably if I was doing that every day, something else would be the thing I'd want to work on every now and again. Because I clearly have too many varied things I'd like to try and do.
Sure.
Which inevitably means I can't get paid for all of them. So something's got to pay the bills and hopefully leave me with enough time to do the rest. And the problem is I'm finding my current work does not really offer that. It's, you got to spend all your energy doing this, and then you have very little else for doing anything else. Oh, we should talk about Dune. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. And since we had our segue talking about AI, because I think it's not even Frank Herbert who invented the concept, although he definitely put it to good effect. The whole Butlerian Jihad concept, I think, may be in our future. I think we might be at the beginning of it, because I think I'm skeptical because there is a weird quasi-religious zealotry to the anti-AI people. Sure. And the funny thing about it is that they were almost always agnostic materialists up until this point, which is why I find them a little bit insufferable. That's why this whole sort of religious conversion kind of annoys me, because it's like, you used to think that we were all just atoms and that music was nothing more than sound waves, and it's just like, so you're not on the wrong track with your AI skepticism, but like you haven't earned this level of zealotry. So shut up, please. Because it's a little bit like, AI was involved in the making of this, therefore it's evil and must be burned. And I'm
You're
like,
a fair weather friend because you don't like the fact that there's no distinction now between what you used to think was.
Well, because here's the thing. If you genuinely was like, I was an agnostic materialist until AI came along and then I became a Christian or religious of some other affiliation, I'd at least have the respect for like, okay, then that was just a catalyst for your own false thinking.
Self-discovery, yeah.
But the problem is, you hate this because it disrupted your worldview.
Yeah.
Not because it itself is wrong. But you're treating it as though it's wrong because it's disrupted your worldview and that has destabilized you.
Right.
But anyways, the zealotry I think we're seeing now, ultimately, is it's the kind of thing that would lead to Butlerian Jihad. So, I mean, I'm not totally opposed to it, because ultimately there is a part of me that thinks if the result of the AI being exceptionally good at fooling people is that people just become more and more skeptical, I'm like, well, that probably wouldn't be bad on the net. On a net level, people being non-materialist skeptics, it's probably better for us as a society. Because, well, I mean, I think that way of thinking was always flawed, and it's only AI that has really brought it into, it's forced those people to think why, and they weren't prepared for that, which is why they're so angry about it. Because they got by without having to think why, because they didn't think any whys mattered, because we were all just atoms. It's like, well, okay, we weren't. Well, we haven't been the way this whole time, and you're only just realizing it. So again,
are they just realizing it, or are they just now admitting it?
They're not admitting it. That's the thing, though. Very few of them are either prescient or humble, or whatever word you want to use, to say, clearly man has a spirit because AI doesn't, and now I see the difference. If someone said that, I'd be like, okay, valid. But they're just like, AI's bad and I hate it. It's like, okay, the fact that you don't know why means you haven't actually grappled with this properly.
Sure.
So, but how familiar with you are, that didn't make much sense, did it?
How familiar with you
How
are.
familiar with the
Mr. Krabs,
source material of Dune were you and are you when we went to see it some time ago?
Not at all when we went to see it. I mean,
So do you know what I mean when I say Butlerian Jihad? Because you react as though you do.
I mean, I don't know that I could specifically say that I know.
What would you say then? This is a somewhat non-committal answer.
I would probably have to the only.
It's not in the books, or it's not in the movies. That's the thing.
So then that for me, I don't know that I think it was probably only because as I watched the stuff, you had mentioned and brought me up to speed on some of the things in the books, obviously, but I mean, that's the only context I have is even just the name, because I remember you discussing it when we went to see it. Was it the second movie or the first movie that we went to see in the actual theater? Because I remember
we went to see the second one. I
remember watching the first one with you before we went to see the second one.
I don't think we did that. I watched the first one on my own, I thought. In fact, I'm quite confident I did, because I didn't watch the first.
I must have watched.
I didn't watch the first one until I had finished the book, and I only finished the book shortly before the second one came out. So I read the book, watched the first one, and then we went to see the second one in theaters. I mean, here's the thing about Dune, and this is why you should read it, because it's the Lord of the Rings of sci-fi for a reason. What's fascinating to me about it is that it's science fiction in the technical sense, but not in any of the usual aesthetic sense. Because there is kind of fanciful technology and stuff like that, but the most advanced thing in the Dune universe are people. And that's what interests me about it. Because it's it doesn't fall into the sci-fi trappings of here's this crazy technology that's possible and all these things. It's no, humans are weird, and given thousands of years, who knows what we'll get up to. And that's a fascinating way to frame science fiction. So the thing about Butlerian Jihad is, and when I say Frank Herbert didn't actually invent it, because, well, he did. But the reason it's called Butlerian Jihad is because there was a book a long time ago now, by a guy whose name I forget, except that his last name was Butler. And essentially, the point of the book is that there is this group of people, essentially it's a kind of Luddite thing, but it's framed positively, where it's essentially, they shun the use of pretty much all machinery, and everything is done by hand, or done by people with simple tools, a little bit sort of Amish-like almost. Mm-hmm. Frank Herbert then kind of expounded on this, because Dune is set essentially in the distant sci-fi future where there has already been the kind of utopian society, and it collapsed because all things do. And part of the reason it collapsed is because effectively it was an AI future where it's okay, we created machines, and then we created computers, and then the computers, we gave them too much power. And again, it's similar to what we've been describing. It's it's not even that the machines became sentient in a Skynet kind of way and decided to exterminate humanity. Mm-hmm. It's just that people gave them too much power because they thought they could trust them. But the fact of the matter is,
what we're realizing is people are freaking idiots.
People were never actually in control of them, or at least someone was always in control of them who wasn't what you thought.
Right.
And so eventually AI, and not just that, but all forms of computers are banned. And that's what the whole concept of Butlerian Jihad is effectively, it's kind of like Terminator, where it's just mankind rebels against all AI and then destroys all computers and then bans people from making computers. Which is why in the Dune universe, if you need computers, you have people who are basically bioengineered computers who are just basically autistic to the nth degree, where it's they're bioengineered to be basically math prodigies. And so that's one of the things. And again, this is not even the point of the book. That's why I think it's fascinating. It's I could read a whole book just about that. But that's why I reference it, is because I do think it's like, well, we're on the path for such a thing where it's like, yeah, let's just get rid of all computers. Because not only do I not want AI, that's bad enough. I don't want sensors in my car. Going back to that conversation, it's like I actually would perfectly be happy with my car being purely mechanical, because then I could diagnose it much more easily, because at least then the mechanics aren't lying to me.
Exactly.
Because if I go into the engine block, and I find something that's broken, then obviously that's the problem. What I don't want is to plug into the computer of my car and have it tell me everything's fine when it's clearly not. Just going, oh yeah, this sensor failed, so it didn't detect that there's a problem. So the computer's just going to gaslight you and say, no, everything's functioning, and then the car just won't start. It's like, well, I don't want to be lied to by my machinery. So, anyways.
Today definitely put me more in the Luddite vein. I mean, I've already been more like, you know me, in that I prefer and enjoy the romance even of the mechanical. Like, my alarm clock currently sitting on the side of my bed is a mechanical wind-up alarm clock.
But does it have the bells?
No.
What does it do then to wake you up?
It's an internal...
Because I had a classic...
But it's not like it doesn't go back and forth between the two bells.
I hated that.
It has almost like I think it has some sort of a spring that hits almost the way that a what is it called, a wind-up like music box does, except it's the same tone. So it goes over and over again in the sense that, like, if you imagine like a coiled spring and then it just finally releases. So
what is it hitting? Is it hitting blocks?
What?
What does it hit that makes noise? Is it a metallic? Does it ring?
Ring-ish.
The thing I don't like is the ringing.
But it's fairly quiet.
I could almost endure that if it was almost like what do they call it? Like a marimba block, where it's like a clunking sort of noise.
Yeah, it's similar.
That I could get behind.
Yeah.
But I had one of those wind-up bell things, and I don't like being woken up with a heart attack every morning.
No, this one doesn't do that.
But then again, there is actually something in the sound. Whoever is the sound designer for the original digital alarm clock is an evil man. Because something in the tone of the kind of buzz sound.
You're talking about the dee.
Yeah, or just because all digital alarm clocks have that same kind of digital horn or whatever, and something in it. Because I have the kind of alarm clock where it starts out super, super quiet and then slowly gets louder. Yeah. And I will wake from a dead sleep the first moment I hear it at like the tiniest decibel. And I literally am like, okay, I will leap out of bed because I have to put mine on the opposite side of the room, because otherwise, if I can turn it off from bed, I will do so and then fall back asleep. So I have to force myself to get up, but I will launch across the room to shut it off before it gets any louder, because something in that sound causes a visceral hatred in me. It's like, I don't know what he did to make it that noise, but it's awful and I hate it. I've watched ads where it's like, not even, or it would be like just in the ad, someone's waking up to an alarm clock, and that alone, I'll be fully awake. And it will just be like, something in my chest is like, kill it! Destroy the thing that makes that noise!
Cast it into the fire!
Because, just something about it, I can't stand the noise.
No, but I'm saying, I do appreciate, like, there's a charm about having the
old school mechanical stuff used to be really impressive.
Oh,
I watched a video about Sunbeam toasters from like the 60s, where it's like you put the toast in and it slowly lowers it, and then when the toast is done, it lifts it back up, and there's no computers in it. I'm like, how the heck did they do that? That's all just like mechanical links and springs and things. And I'm like, that's true. That's ingenuity. Making a computer do stuff was like, that's not impressive to me. I'm not impressed by making a computer do something. I'm impressed by making non-sentient, just mechanics do something you want. That's far more impressive. That's mastery over material, not whatever kind of voodoo computers are.
Well, that's...
I say as we record this on a computer.
I'm just saying...
You need to get a phonograph. Speak into clay cylinders, and then no one will listen to them. Then again, what else would we do? See, back in the day, people like us would just be seen as weird eccentrics. We're like, what's this giant cabinet full of old phonograph cylinders? Those are from conversations I used to have with a friend of mine. We've never shown them to anybody ever. And I've also hardly listened to any of them, but we recorded them just for the sake of it.
Posterity.
Kind of weird thing nobility would do.
But that's my point. It's a culture thing. Back to that other concept that we were talking about. The what is it called? The Benedict option.
Oh, okay. I think they were attempting to preserve more than just their own petty musings.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Musings are important too.
Well, that's true. I mean, there is, I suppose, this
is where I come back to generational history. Like, leaving behind something for your next generations in your family is far more specific, but it's like...
The problem with that is that necessitates family being a thing that's valued socially as opposed to atomized individuals. Because the thing is, I
don't specifically care if it's valued socially. The question is, do you value it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, true, but it used to be... Families, it was easier to form families when families were the building block of society. Sure. Whereas nowadays, society is actually geared towards atomized individuals and family life is more difficult to maintain.
Sure.
Whereas it used to be the case, it was like, if you don't have kids, then it's like, well, no one cares about you. Like, yeah, we're going to make this space usable for families because they're the ones who are going to inherit civilization. Like, you and your cats aren't welcome here, basically. That's what we used to say to such people.
To the dog lady that got mauled by a... Did you see that?
What?
There was some furry weirdo that...
What?
Like, thought she was a dog or acted like she was a dog or whatever. And she's literally barking at another dog. And she's on... It was a video.
I have no clue.
For a time. She was literally barking at another dog, and the dog attacked her. It's like, well, serves you right. You're not a dog, but the dog treated you like you were one because you were acting stupid, and now you get mauled. That's how that happens.
I don't remember anything about this. Not that I am bemoaning that fact. I wish I hadn't heard about it.
I mean, that sounds heartless of me, but I'm like, well, play stupid games.
Well, that's the thing. We could talk about karmic debt. That actually was a topic. Here's the problem. So I write down topics when I think when they're fresh in my mind. So I'll write down like just a few sentences, not even like a few words that I think will be like, yeah, I'll know what I'm talking about. And then weeks later, I'm like, what the heck was I on about? Talking about karmic debt. But that's literally all I wrote down. Yes, too many people have been playing stupid games and not winning their stupid prizes. And now we got a big backlog of stupid prizes, and we're all having to take one.
No.
We are, though.
I'm not taking one.
Because people won't take them. We got warehouses full of your stupid prizes, people.
I don't know. Society's getting interesting, though. Did you see the guys that are, like, there's this wave of new vigilantes that are literally going after predators, like child predators.
But see,
that's
not the stupid games, because people have always been against that, though.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking like these people are like, just, no, law isn't doing enough anymore, so we're just going to go and kill them. No, I'm not. You laugh. I'm dead serious. Like, there's been like a wave of like, I think it was like 6 different people.
Well, I mean,
couple months.
I'm on paper not in favor of such things for legal reasons. But for the one, there was the one guy who was already in prison, who was just like, yeah, I just decided to kill the Chimo one day.
Yeah.
I was like, well, you were already in prison, so I mean, I guess you're just like adding years to your sentence at that point. So I'm like, okay, thanks, I guess.
No thanks.
I wouldn't condone. Say, I don't condone killing unless you've already done it. Pulling the reverse Batman. So that was I don't know. It was a Batman quote from who knows when, I don't. But it was like, if you kill a killer, then the number of killers stays the same. And then it was like they had poised it as though it was Punisher and Batman having a conversation. It's just Punisher going like, yeah, but if you kill a bunch of killers, then like the number goes down a lot. It's like +1 minus a bunch. So it's like, well, you've already done it and you're already in prison. So, I mean, you go ahead. But that's not the thing, because that's something we can all, everyone agrees, aside from the people who do it, they're like, yeah, that's awful and shouldn't be tolerated. But the problem is we got too many people playing stupid games and acting like they don't deserve the stupid prizes. And then that's when they just pile up in warehouses, and then eventually we're all going to have to deal with them. Government's going to have to distribute, mandate, everyone takes a certain number of stupid prizes. That it doesn't matter what stupid games you played. Everyone needs at least one stupid prize, apparently.
Well, that's already happening.
Exactly, but it's like, no, how about we take all of these and give them to the people? What if we take all the stupid prizes and put them over there? Because it's just stupid. Because if you don't get your karmic comeuppance, then the rest of us have to.
This is why you got to actually force them to take it.
Well, yeah, but the problem is then they act like you're oppressive when you do
Steve
that.
here will be rumming the, are you going to hear me out?
It's just, I want my karmic vigilantes. I want a bunch of Hindus coming around and people going, hunting you down across your various incarnations.
That would make an excellent anime. That we should make that. Some sort of hyper-vigilante that literally goes through and just...
I'm just saying, because otherwise the rest of us have to deal with it, and I'm sick and tired of that. We've been playing that for long enough.
Not in this life. I've done such a great job. The bill comes due. Look for it in your next anime show. What's the website that most people watch anime on? What's that one?
Depends on if you're law-abiding or otherwise. I will not disclose to you the site I use.
Okay. That makes it sound far more suspect.
I refuse to answer that on the grounds it may incriminate me. But yes, there are plenty of popular sites that are above board that people use, and I couldn't tell you what they are.
All I'm saying is that's what it's going to be called.
What, Karma Man?
Look for the
Karma Sutra. I hope it picked that up. That would be the perfect note to end on if it picked up whatever noise that was.
Coming soon to theaters.
Real question I've got then. What does Kama Sutra even mean?
I don't know, but I know what it actually is.
I mean, like, can you use it?
Yeah.